Good day, it's Max Moyo, your wealth catalyst and human transformation coach. Today we are going to look at money and identity. Who you are determines how much money you will ever make in your life. Who you are also determines how much money, or rather how you spend the money that you make. And so if you don't know who you are going to look for identity in two things. Either a position and or possession. Isn't that the story of our lives? We wake up every morning rushing off to work in search of position and possession. And if you can't get the position, sometimes they'll tell you, hey, you're not management material. So you kind of accept that you will never get the position, but man, you can still get the possessions. And so what do? We buy cars we cannot afford. We buy houses we cannot afford. We buy clothes we cannot afford. Because you see, in the absence of knowing who you are going to spend your money trying to buy identity. If you find yourself at the end of the month unable to pay your bills, you do not have financial problems. You have identity problems. Ouch. Can I say that again? If you find yourself at the end of the month unable to pay your bills, your problem is not money, your problem is identity. Why? Because who you are determines how much money you will ever make in your life. So let's follow this argument. Out of the 7.3 billion people on this planet, there's only one of you. And you were born with three very important, I call them capitals. Number one, you were born with a unique identity. Irresistible difference. So you have the capacity to be the difference wherever you are. Number two, you were born with a unique set of talents. Now, there are no two people in the world with the same set of talents. Now, let's see how the logic works there. If you have a set of talents that no one else in the world has got, it follows, therefore, that if you should engage these talents, develop these talents, hone these talents, there is something in this world that only you can do better than anyone else. And if that is true, that you are the only person who can do what you can do like you can do, then the world will pay top dollar for what you can do. And so you are broke because you don't know who you are. See, this is very important. We're very good at using excuses. No, I didn't go to school. That's why I'm broke. I did the wrong course. There are no jobs. But let's take one excuse that is very common. I am poor because I couldn't go to school. And I'm a village boy, grew up in a village. And when I was growing up in the village, there were a lot of villagers who didn't go to school. But there was wealthy villagers who didn't go to school. In fact, my own grandfather was one of those. Never went to school. Not one day. And yet he owned over 100 cattle. Let me ask you a question. Where you come from, whether it's a village, whether it's a location, suburb, it doesn't matter. Wherever you come from, are there people in your environment, your community, that did not go to school but are wealthy? I'm willing to bet that the answer is yes. And so there goes your excuse about being poor because you're not educated. All you need to succeed in life is your unique identity, your unique set of talents, and your unique purpose. I call it the tripartite alliance of success. Now let's look at this. If you're not educated, do you have a unique set of talents? Yes. If you're not educated, do you have a unique purpose? Yes. Do you have a unique identity? Yes. So you've got the three things that you need to succeed: identity, talents, and purpose. And therefore, if you are broke, I will repeat again, you are broke because you don't know who you are. Now, part of the challenge or the excuse we use is that, we're not wealthy. We can't generate wealth because we don't make enough. What I learned in the village when I was growing up was it doesn't matter how much you made. You always understood that a part of what you make goes to your seed for the next season. And because you didn't control rain, you understood that you have to put a part of what you made or harvested, put away just in case it doesn't rain next season. And only then do you now spend what is left or sell what is left. And so I thought maybe today that we're going to talk about investing. Why don't we look at investing from an African perspective? And so I'm going to share with you what I call the African village wealth model. The African village wealth model. I know some of you are sitting there thinking, what are you talking about, village wealth model? Yes, there is a village wealth model. There are key principles that I learned in the village that I believe that they are still valid even today. So come with me. Let's take a walk back into history. And I'm going to take you to my village. In my village, at about the age of 6 as a young boy, you started looking after livestock. So depending on what was available at your place, you probably started looking after goats as a young boy. And of course, as you get more experience, you'd graduate and start looking after cattle. Now you have to remember this now. In the village, they didn't have bank accounts. So the entire wealth of the family was in livestock. So I often tell people that I became a wealth manager for the family at the age of 6. Because when I was looking after my father's cows, I was looking after the entire wealth of my family. So between the age of 6 and 18, I looked after livestock. By the time I was 18, I had over 12 years experience in wealth generation. I knew everything about raising cattle. There's no one who could cheat me when it came to raising cattle. That brings us to principle number 1 of the village wealth model. The first principle of the village wealth model is get investment knowledge. This is a critical principle. In other words, don't invest in something you don't understand. If you don't understand it, stay away from it. It's logical. If you invest in things you don't understand, that's where people get defrauded because you don't know what's going on. So the first rule in investment is get investment knowledge. So the African villagers, in their knowledge and their wisdom, they knew. They started us as little kids. 6 years old, you were already being trained on wealth generation. Principle number 2. Now, after 18, generally what used to happen in the village in the olden days, when you turn 18, you were free now to look for a job. So you'd go into the city to look for a job or go to a farm, whatever you're going to look for a job. When you get a job, the rule was your first paycheck belonged to your parents. Those of you of African origin probably still remember that. To this day, some people are still doing that. But a lot of people don't understand what the logic was behind sending your first paycheck home. It was a simple thing. What happened is that the villagers noticed that as we grew older and then we went into the city to work, we forgot the lessons that we had been taught on wealth generation. So people go into the city, get salaries. Because they get a salary every month, they couldn't care less about investing. And before they knew it, they woke up one day, they were 60, 65 and retired, and they had no pension. And in those days anyway, if you were black, there was no pension fund anyway. So the old people came up with a very smart idea. They said, no. As part of our culture, first paycheck belongs to your parents. And so you would send your first paycheck home, and they would use that money to deposit your first cow. Remember now. So principle number 2, invest from your first paycheck. Let me ask you, my fellow listener, with your degree and all the education, what was the first thing you bought when you started working? For most of us today, the one thing that we're looking for is to buy a car. And you don't even buy the car. You go to the bank and you borrow money to buy a depreciating asset. It seems to me that the villagers were smarter without a formal education than those of us who have a formal education. Principle number 3 Notice something. They did not buy an ox or a bull. They bought a cow. Simple logic. Principle number 3 would be invest in a productive asset, because a cow will give you a calf. Principle number 4. Notice now, a cow will give you a calf. Translation, your investment must give you interest. Don't put your money where there's no return. It's a basic principle as old as Mother Earth. You invest where there is what? A return. Principle number 5. If you're fortunate, the calf would be female, which means after a couple of years, the calf gives you a calf. Translation, compounding of interest. And you thought that the villagers didn't understand finance. Isn't it amazing that they got it? The power of compounding. Number 6. Now, notice in the village, we keep our cattle in a kraal. There are 3 main reasons, really, why we keep cattle in a kraal. Number 1 is organic farming. What did I say? Organic farming. I know most of you think that organic farming started with Woolworths. I got news for you. Every African villager was an organic farmer, and this is how it worked. You keep your cattle in the kraal, and so you collect the manure throughout the year. If you go to any village around October now, which is rainy season in this part of Africa, around October, the villagers are digging that manure out and putting it in the field for organic farming. So that was one of the first benefits, additional benefits of having cattle. The second additional benefit was we used to milk the cows in the morning. You can't milk them if they're in the bush. The third one was we didn't use tractors back in the day. We used to have to yoke the oxen and go plowing. So that was the third benefit. So the third benefit you got was you used the cattle for plowing. If you didn't own cattle, that means you have to pay someone for the manure, pay somebody for milk, and pay someone to plow for you. So there you are. You get 3 additional benefits for owning cattle. And of course, that makes it for principle number 6, which is your investment must give you dividends. As you know, dividends is just additional income. All right. And of course, the final one, which is principle number 7. And the question is, a lot of times when we talk about investment, the first thing someone will say to me, how long should I be invested? And I keep saying, more often than not, the answer to the questions that you seek already exists in your own culture. So let's go back to the village and find out. How long did the villager invest in cattle? And you're going to find that in the village, you were invested for as long as you were alive. Because as the African villagers, we believe strongly in the principle that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Now let's look at this and see what the logic is. In fact, it's so brilliant, the issue of having cattle. You know, the Zulus have a saying, and I'm going to say it in Zulu, then I'll translate it for you. Ubuhle bendoda zinkomo zayo. The beauty of a man is in his assets. In fact, by African tradition, if you didn't own livestock, you couldn't sit in the council of elders. It's important to generate wealth. Part of a critical aspect of being a human being. Now, let's look at these principles in full. Get investment knowledge. When was the last time you attended an investment seminar or read a book on investments? Invest from a first paycheck. If you haven't done it because you've been working for a while, I mean, how many of you have been sitting there saying, I'll start investing next month? And next month you say next month. And I'm willing to bet that next month is never going to come. So if you didn't do your first paycheck, then I challenge you that tomorrow morning, open your first investment account. Invest in a productive asset. You need to be clear about where your money is going to be invested. Number 4, investment must give you interest. This is critical because I've noticed quite a bit that people like these fixed deposits, the bank fixed deposit, where the return is less than inflation. In my view, that is a very poor investment. At the very least, what you want to do is to invest in an investment that will give you, at the very least, inflation plus. Well, I find a lot of people don't really pay attention to their investments. It's, no, I'm invested. They don't know. Pay attention to your investment. The same attention that you give to your health. I often say to people, if if my liver is giving me problems, I don't go to my friend and say, hey man, just take that knife and open up here and check what's happening with my liver. Man, I don't even trust my own doctor. I'd have to go to a specialist. Yet I've seen people, when it comes to wealth, that they will go to their poor and broke friend and ask investment advice. If you are going to invest, then find an investment advisor, a professional investment advisor. All right, so let's go now and say, well, these are the 7 key principles that we learned from the village. Suppose you go to Harvard University or Wits or any business school. They're going to teach you about the 7 key principles of investment. 7 key principles of investment that you learn from any business school. Number 1, get investment knowledge. That sounds familiar. Isn't it the same thing with the African village model? Number 2, the earlier you start investing in the stock market, the more money you make. That sounds familiar too. Number 3, invest in a productive asset. So you find asset management companies hire analysts whose job is to analyze companies to find the most productive. Number 4, the power of interest. Number 5, the power of compounding. Number 6, dividends. Any company that declares dividends on a regular basis becomes the darling of the investment community. Number 7, the longer you are invested in the stock market, the more money you make. And there you find it. The same principles that applied in the village apply today in the modern economy. My wish for you is that in reviewing and observing this, that you will be encouraged to go to your next investment seminar. Or join me. I also run investment workshops. They're called Money and Identity, that will look deeper into the relationship between your identity and how much money you will make and how much of the money you make you get to keep. And if you need me to come and talk to your congregation, to your workers if it's at work, to you and your friends, or whatever your investment group, you can get hold of me. My contacts are at the bottom of the screen right now. I will see you at the next Money and Identity workshop. Thank you very much.